Giulia Enders had been working on her PhD in microbiology in Frankfurt, Germany, when a presentation on the gut won her the Science Slam Prize in her native Germany. Her treatise on the gut went viral and resulted in her best-selling book. It's called Gut, the Inside Story of Our Body's Most Underrated Organ, and she joins us now in studio. Giulia, it's great to meet you.
Hello.
Okay, where does your interest in the gut come from?
Well, it started when I realized I basically know nothing about my own body. I had the skin disease and I didn't know what to do. And I thought it's weird, you know, we know all these things about economics, politics, Hollywood stars, but the body, the one that will really stick with us, we know so little. And I started reading about the gut and I soon realized I can visibly make my life better. And there are so many surprises on the way learning about this organ.
We'll get into some of them, but not only do we not know much about it, we're kind of a little embarrassed to talk about it as well, aren't we? How come?
Yes, I mean, first of all, we can't see what's all being done there for us every day. So basically what we associate, you know, is maybe eating or going to the toilet, and that's it. And I was the same way, so I think this has a big potential because you actually think very little of it. But then when you realize, you know, it does so many things, it works together with your metabolism, influencing your body weight, your immune function, even your mood, all those things, I think you cannot not look at it differently.
We want to put some of the pictures up we'll go through during the course of our conversation that you've got in your book. Here's number one right here. Look on the monitor just above me there. Looks like you had a little fun putting this book together. Who did the picture?
My sister did.
Your sister is the artist. Very good.
And sometimes I had to laugh so hard when she sent me another one. I just sent her the text and she sent me this back and it was great.
So what's going on in this picture?
Well, what we see are some different creatures. They're part of our microbiota, the microorganisms that live in our gut. And they can be quite different. Some of them, you know, they might make you a little more chubby. Other ones, they could possibly make you a happier person. Some really help you having your gut clean, all those things. It's a variety. We can't, 60% of them, we can't put them in petri dishes. And they're really bound to our guts and live there. And it's a surprise bag, you know. Your fate, your microbiome, it's really something you pick up with your everyday choices, where you're born, what you take in your mouth, what you eat, all those things.
What's a microbiome?
Oh, that's all the microorganisms and their genetics.
And I mean, the assumption would be that whatever is there in your gut is just what you ate. Is that right?
Well, I mean, this is a factor that is actually a key factor of shaping this. We see that our genetics, they have a smaller influence on the microorganisms in our gut than the food we eat has. So it's something that's very attractive to go into in research, because we can influence it easier than, you know, than genetics or environment to address diseases.
There is bacteria in our gut. Is it good to have bacteria in our gut?
Of course.
It is good, okay.
You know, through media, I think we oftentimes feel like germs are something icky dangerous. And when you really look at the numbers, and I have to do this when I work in microbiology, you see that 95% of all bacteria on this whole planet, they don't do anything bad to us. They don't harm us. Most of them can really help us getting vitamins out of the food or really having energy produced for the gut, all those things. And then 5% can make you sick. And this is really a very different relation than what you see on television or in print media.
Okay, we hear about the large and small intestine all the time. And Sheldon, let's bring up the second picture here from the book, because they each do different jobs, I presume. You want to help us out through that?
Of course. I think the fun thing we often don't realize is how much movement there is. After this point here, you can feel all this up to here, and from this point on, we can't feel anything what's happening.
From your bottom of your neck.
From here on, it's gone. You don't know. And there's so much movement. The stomach, it moves so drastically. It throws the food to its opposite wall and really gets the job done, kind of like a rough guy. And then the small intestine is a very hard worker. It kneads through everything and always pushes the projects forward. And the large intestine is very different. It's rather chilled out, lean back. It takes its time, you know, and gets stuff out of our food that the small intestine would just be too fast, too eager for.
Here's a quote from your book. When food contamination scares, such as tainted salad recalls, are in the news, some people react by giving up lettuce while others type full body decontamination shower into Google. Different people deal with fear in different ways. Dismissing this as hysteria is too easy. It makes more sense to try to understand where these fears are coming from. So, okay, We are afraid of germs. Why are we afraid of germs if you keep telling us that 95% of bacteria are really quite okay?
Well, of course they can, they can harm you, they can make you sick. But the problem is with the view of hygiene that we have right now. We think we have to put all of our energy into protecting us from the bad, and this is not possible. There will always be bad bacteria, and actually in your gut, it's also good to have gut bacteria because they can train your immune system. It's really just the balance that makes a gut a clean gut, and that's where you have to put energy also in harvesting your good bacteria. They will just take up more room inside of the gut, and then you will be better protected from other bacteria.
If you're a kid, is it a good idea to go outside and play around in the dirt?
Yes, it's not a bad idea. I mean, you should have the vaccines that are good for doing that, because they can be bacteria, they can really harm people. But I think we see with our hygiene that since we started being so careful about hygiene, the numbers of infections have not really dropped. So we still have, infections, sinusitis, we have lung infections, we have all these infections. They haven't, stopped because of us being so scared of germs. What has, become more and more is autoimmune diseases and all those things. So this perspective of cleanliness is not the one we will stick with forever, I think. I think we will see clean as a balanced thing. I think we will see us harvesting the good thing is really a clean act more than always trying to protect from the bad.
There's this expression that cleanliness is next to godliness. But too much cleanliness, I guess, can prevent you from developing immunities, and that'll make you sick, right?
Well, yeah. So I think cleanliness in the future will be something different than it is today.
Antibiotics. People pop antibiotics nowadays for everything. They get a cold, they pop antibiotics. Let's bring up another one of those images, and you can tell us about how antibiotics affect what is going on here?
You see the onesie? Isn't that great?
The what?
There's this one German, it's hiding in like a costume, like a one piece.
Which one?
The one
oh, bottom right-hand corner?
Bottom right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I thought that was a squirrel, and I wondered what the squirrel was doing in the gut.
See, it was hidden. It was hiding so well that you thought it was a squirrel.
I did.
What we see is that bacteria, they just want to live, and that's basically what all living things on Earth do. So then when we put antibiotics in our mouth, it doesn't automatically go to the sinus or to the bladder infection. It goes very first to the gut, and that's where most of our bacteria are, and they have to deal with this. They have to develop strategies to survive, and some of them just don't, they die. And we see that this is a rising problem, and I'm still a fan of having antibiotics in our world because they can help people survive. They can help children from having lifelong damages from stupid little infections. So it's important. But it's also important to know you're making a deal. You're really putting something in and you're getting something back. And what you're putting in is your balance. The gut ecosystem is a very sensible thing and can be disturbed, and this can have following things. We see that now kids who have a lot of antibiotics, they're more likely to have irritable bowel syndrome later on in their life. And then when they have those problems, doctors look what's wrong with them, but they can't find anything. And that's probably because it's been done 30 years ago. So we have to see that there's a balance, and most common colds are caused by viruses, and antibiotics won't do anything but destroy your gut flora.
So stop taking antibiotics as if they were Tic Tacs.
Yeah, use them smart. And if you have a doctor that will just give them to you to please you, that's a bad doctor.
Here's another excerpt from your book. There is no species protection program for gut bacteria. We can be pretty certain that we have annihilated many family heirlooms since the discovery of antibiotics. How do you heal the gut after having to take antibiotics?
Well, we actually have already pretty good evidence that it can protect people when they take probiotics during or right after taking antibiotics. And this is especially true for children, and because they have a more sensitive, not so stable microbiota. And
Just to be clear, probiotics, like yogurt, that kind of stuff?
Well, probiotics as in products you can buy in a pharmacy, for example. And there are some that can be recommended as on basis of the studies that we have. And when we look at the numbers, I don't know, do you want to get numberish?
Get numberish.
All
what
right,
the heck?
let's do this. We have this thing called number needed to treat. So we look how many do we have to treat to really prevent them from having something serious. And this number is 12 for kids with antibiotics. You have to give probiotics to 12 kids to really have one avoiding something really unpleasant. And it sounds like, wow, 12, but when you look at medication for heart attack, and that's what a lot of people they take after they had a heart attack to avoid a second one, the number needed to treat is 200 to 400. So it's actually a really good idea to have probiotics when your kids have antibiotics.
How conclusive are the studies that link gut health to obesity?
I think they are forming a picture, and that's the important thing we can do right now. You know, many of those things are in infancy. They have very interesting outcomes, and we can start putting together a picture. And this picture will help us to make smart choices when it gets to treatment. You know, what we see that there are bacteria that can get more calories out of your food. We see that there are differences in obese people compared to normal weight people. They usually have far less diversity of bacteria in their gut. You could say, you know, of our understanding, cleaner, but that's not what the real clean is in the gut. So the less diversity is one point. Then we see bacteria that we especially see in people normal weight or people really making sports. And in some animal experience, those bacteria can save mice from putting on weight when they get a high caloric diet. Then we also see things that make us think about obesity more diversely. We see that there are people who are obese and they have very low diversity, and we see people that are overweight and they have actually a lot diversity. And those people will usually then not have the typical diseases associated with being overweight or obese. They won't have diabetes or high blood pressure. Although they both have a little too much weight on, yet the ones with more diversity are protected from the typical, you know, obese disease.
So you would like there to be a nice, clean, neat relationship between whatever's happening in the gut and obesity, and we haven't got that yet, do we?
Well, we have interesting clues, and I think we still have to work out things and be more sure and have more studies on all kinds of stuff. But I think making us think about many areas of the body and diseases differently is the thing that's really intriguing, not thinking about it so one-directional. Still, what you eat will make you put on weight, but we now see that the gut bacteria can influence 10 to 30% of our body weight. So that's a number to have in your head.
That's a significant percentage.
For now, yeah.
Okay, let's look for more connections here. Is there anything that suggests a connection between a healthy gut and mental health?
Yes, we have this as a whole research area of its own. It's called the gut-brain axis. And it was started with some experiments that really drew a lot of attention towards it. We saw that a mice model that we use for antidepressant research, when they swim and they tend to give up earlier, the more depressed they are. When an Irish team gave them certain kinds of bacteria, probiotics you could say, they swam for a longer time period, and also they had less stress hormones in their blood. And the idea behind that is the brain is very great at managing everything, but it's very isolated. It has this bony skull around, thick skin.
That's another picture.
That's a great picture too. and the thing is, it needs information to know how we are doing and to put this mood together. And a lot of that information can actually be sent to it by the gut, which is the second largest collection of nerve cells after the brain.
Was that your sister's sense of humor? Is that supposed to be a picture of you?
Maybe. There are quite some things hidden in the book. Some of our friends are hidden in there, and sometimes you can see me somewhere in the gut, but hanging from the ceiling. But yeah.
If you see any of the, I want to see them, okay? If that picture comes up, you point it out to me. So the brain and the gut do work together?
Well, I think the gut is a very important counselor. You could probably say that. And we see, especially in people with irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease, they have a higher risk of having anxiety or depression. And if they don't know that this research is going on, you know, they would probably think, it's my stupid head, my life is stupid, something like this. And we now look at this differently in science, and I think it should be communicated.
Fruit, sugar, fructose intolerance. What is that?
I'm always unsure whether we should really call it intolerance, because now, see, our parents ate like a third or a fourth of the fructose we eat nowadays, because fructose, they put it in everything. Sometimes they proudly write, you know, with fruit sugar or something like this. And
like that's a good thing.
Yeah, and fruit sugar is not a bad thing. Like many of those things we're afraid of eating nowadays, it's really the amount and the balance of your diet, and this can get so out of hand when everything is produced and there are all these things in it. You can't really see what you're eating anymore, and I think it's actually one of the most problematic ingredients is fructose now, because people, they get bloated, they have a stomach ache, and they sometimes even don't know that it's coming from fructose. But it's in all kinds of food, it's put as a sweetener and everything, and this just gets things out of balance.
Well, that's the thing. It's one thing for it to appear naturally in food. It's another thing for food companies to inject more of it into food that we probably don't need. You agree with that?
Yes,
yeah,
totally.
Okay. What is the most common, I'm not sure you like the word intolerance, but what's the most common intolerance that our gut seems to have?
It's really the fructose one.
That's the one.
And that's weird because we don't talk about that so much. And then, of course, we have lactose, we have gluten, and we have food allergies, and all those things sometimes get mixed up, although they work very differently. We see that with lactose, it's really, for most of the people, it's a question of amount. With gluten, it can be a very severe immune problem, and it can cause very severe effects. And then there's differences in people just having a little problem with gluten, let's say after gastroenteritis, and then they are afraid and they won't ever eat it again. Or it's sometimes with people having it for all meals of the day, that this can be affecting them. And then it's really celiac individuals who, with the smallest amounts of gluten, they will have effects and they will have a health problem.
I don't want to seem overly intolerant here, but I do see a lot of people nowadays saying, "Oh, I'm lactose intolerant," or "Is that product gluten-free? I can't have any gluten in my diet," and they look like perfectly healthy people otherwise. Are we exaggerating this a bit here?
Well, I think this is so difficult because so many things have changed. Our food, it has changed drastically. It has never changed that much ever in history. And then all those things that are essential to digestion, which are bacteria, they are changing so much, not only environment, it's antibiotics, it's stress, it's all those things that really make a change, and I feel it's hard to judge so fast. I'm a big supporter of body feeling and having knowledge to trust this body feeling, but the thing is, we have so much information that's just put out there, like, do this, don't do this, this is dangerous, this is good, you should eat more or less of this and that. And I think this is problematic because you can just have a smart body feeling when you understand stuff and not being told, This is why I always try to not give advice in the book. I just try to explain the things behind it, and then you can go and decide for yourself.
Is it wise to eliminate something from your diet entirely that you fear?
I think if you have problems, and look at problems like, do I have a tummy ache? What does my stool look like? Turn around, you're in the toilet anyways, make a quick check, is this all right? There's a stool scale, you can look at that.
I wondered how long it was going to take you to finally start talking about poo-poo.
Well, it's not the thing that I'm going out to do, but I just feel like if we don't talk about it at all, that's when it gets problematic. It's not the thing that I build everything around. Sometimes it's just the elephant in the room, so I address it so we can move on. So sometimes it's like that, but it's a basic thing, and you can check it out and see how it's doing, and have some of those signs, and when they tell you something is wrong, then you can experiment. I mean, leaving something out is not a dangerous self-experiment. You can do it, and as long as your friends don't get totally mad because they have to buy the food in the pharmacy when they cook, find a balance.
Would whatever's in my gut look like the same as whatever is in some 50-something guy's gut who lives in South Asia or in France or in Chile or whatever? I mean, is it all basically the same?
Well, we see that it's surprisingly the same because we have 3 different types of gut bacteria that were discovered. It is dependent on the majority, what kind of bacteria makes up the majority. And those were really independent from where you live, who you are really. What really matters is probably food. If you're a vegetarian, you might be similar to a vegetarian from a different country. If you eat a lot of meat, you might be similar to some, 4-year-old in Pforzheim, Germany that just started loving meat as well. So it's very different, but there are also a lot of similarities.
Okay, let's finish up on this in our last minute here. Alcohol, good for the gut or no?
The thing is, alcohol goes to the gut first, and there's many nerve cells, and we actually have very little research on what alcohol does, how does it make us feel so good. And it really goes to the nerve cells in the gut first. That's what you can say by basically knowing about digestion. And we see it can also make bacteria grow more, because alcohol can be a growth signal. So it could be, let's just hypothesize on that it relaxes the gut nerves, which gives you a relaxing feeling because they can signal up to the brain. And then let's say it would make the bacteria grow more. So when this soothing effect goes away, it's a bit overcrowded, and then you might not feel so well. And if that pattern is, known to somebody, it could be an interesting hypothesis, but this is not something that we've looked into specifically.
They call it a beer belly for a reason. Yes, they do. The author of the book Gut, the inside story of our body's most underrated organ, that's Giulia Enders. Giulia, it's great to meet you. Thanks for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Ausgezeichnet, as we say in Frankfurt.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.